Hello, this will be part 4 in the series of Hermetic America, and basically throughout this series, but throughout all the videos that I do, I have a look at it with a focus on architecture and then a comparison to the Hermetic schools. For instance, Oddfellows, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and these types of groups which the wording can be depends, basically from esoteric to the occult. Now when I say esoteric in this sense, I mean it as in esoteric has in an initiated knowledge, something which you must be something that there is deeper. What does occult mean? Well, there are many definitions, but when I use the term, I use it as in the term of hidden. So occult knowledge is hidden knowledge. So esoteric and occult, you could technically not, but you could interchange them. So it's basically hidden knowledge that you are initiated into. Now groups are well known, for instance Freemasons, now I use them because they're so well known and so well documented, and they are you are initiated into different levels. It's a quasi-secret society in that it's in the telephone book. They're not a secret themselves, but they are a society that holds secrets. Now, that could be applied to any of the churches or any organisation, a business corporation. If you come in at entry level, you're not privy to the higher levels, and so it's not necessarily as nefarious as it might be. And there's many good reasons for it, because you must acquire this knowledge, you must earn it, rather than just be dumped onto your lap. Now, in this particular video, it'll be a focus on Denver. So previously I've been using Indianapolis. Indiana has something of as a yardstick, but in this case I'll be having a look at Denver, and these will all connect. But to begin with, so if we focus down in, we have the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Denver. So this is strictly a religious building. You're going to find it in major public buildings. It actually goes back to ancient temples across the world. But what's important about the Cathedral Basilica of Immaculate Conception here in Denver, Colorado, is that it's 210 feet high, which in Samian or Samos fingers converts to 2953.125. As we get to the end of the video, I'll show the importance of this and how it connects to so many other places. But just a recap. So in the California State Capitol building, the total height of a building is something else, but to the ceiling, 210 feet. Coit Tower in San Francisco, I've done quite a long video just on San Francisco, and Coit Tower being a very prominent, important feature, 210 feet. The Kentucky State Capitol building, amongst many other architectural symbols and more elaborate ornamentation symbols, 210 feet. And Indiana, as I mentioned, that was been a yardstick throughout this series. That's 210 feet. Now I could do a whole bunch of other ones. You'll find it in Australia and so many other buildings. It's something of a standard. So, but now there we see the Colorado State Capitol building, opened 1894, and the architect was Elijah Myers. Now he's important because previous video I went on Michigan State Capitol, and also by Elijah Myers, and the Texas State Capitol building, also by Elijah Myers. I'll go further into that. I might need to correct it. In a previous episode I might have given the credit to Michigan to Alfred Picknard, but it's not. It's actually Elijah Myers, but Alfred Picknard and John Cochran are very important, and we'll focus on them. But the Colorado State Capitol building, it's very rich in Corinthian design. So by that I mean the columns there are Corinthian. Internally we have Corinthian on second, first and third level. Now this is somewhat unusual because typically you would have Doric, Ionic and Corinthian columns. That's pretty much a standard. However, we'll examine that a little bit further and we'll see how the larger plan, the temple plan, because it's not just the building, it's the street plan and almost always you'll find that the major public building will be in the middle of some sort of square or park, which forms a greater temple. But another interesting point is regards that the very center of a building has a slight margin of error in that, and hopefully in the future I'll talk about that, because margins of error are actually very important to this. There is a hidden meaning, a hidden level to that, which brings another level of beauty and harmony to this. But again, as with basically all of these buildings, the cornerstone was laid in a Freemasonic ceremony. This is again something in previous episodes in this series, previous videos I've shown the importance of the ritual importance of the cornerstone, and how that especially, and how Freemasons have been a very important driving force in regards to this. But okay, so now that here we see this white building in the centre with a dome on it. That's important because that's connected to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. That's why the number 33 is so important. So this is the Scottish Rite Masonic Centre or Consistory, but you could also the Scottish Rite Cathedral. I wish I could get more info, because I guarantee you I can guess the exact numbers on it. But the architect William Norman Bowman studied under Elijah Meyer, so there is this connection here. And something I would like to talk about in the future more is the fact that especially Scottish Rite cathedrals, as far as I know so far, there are many to study, but they tend to be designed by non-Masons, so it seems to be something of a pattern or a theme. But Denver itself has a very strong, as other states I've already detailed earlier in this series, I'll put the links in the description. But the state seal, for instance, amongst many other states, but Denver is specific because you have the all-seeing eye and the fasci. So the axe in the bundle of sticks is also a Roman symbol, a symbol of authority, and you'll also find that in other buildings, but the Capitol building in America, so many others, it's pretty much a standard symbol. But quickly in Chicago, the Daniels and Fisher Tower, one of the early towers there, 330 feet high, not including the flagpole. But just as a connection back to, say, the Scottish Rite Cathedral in Indianapolis is 330 feet long. This is a very important, so whether it's 33 or 330, you will find this running through the number 33, very important, but also it will be connected in measures. So you'll see it in a symbolic sense, but you also see it in a measure sense. And I try to focus on the measures because this is basically, I'm designing my argument to skeptics, to people who don't, who think this is all a coincidence and that this is a bunch of, sort of mumbo jumbo. Well, it's not, because you can actually measure it and you'll find this pattern consisting. So you also have this obelisk. This is the Armed Forces Monument, and again, it's a standard feature. For instance, in Indianapolis, you'll find the War Memorial Plaza there, how the obelisk placed basically in the centre. Same feature you'll find, for instance, here in Australia. It's just one. So it's not just the state capitol building. It's not just the parkland itself connected to it. There in the distance, that building was the city and county building. Now, there's a bit conflicting measures on there, so I haven't included it, but it has all the same features and themes. But this is the Denver Civic Plaza. Now, sorry for, I have a slow connection, so when I do these Google screen grabs, it's a bit of a mess, takes time. But amongst these parks and the greater temple plan, the use of sculptures is also very important. Certain themes, even certain measures, you'll again just consistently find repeated. So I'm not going to comment on that one, but you will, again, so many others, basically every city I've dealt with, we have the same things going here. But in the civic centre, so we have the Greek theatre there, and we have these two columns. Now that the Boas and Yakim, as sometimes they're called. But again, these are very Masonic, very standard themes. Now, when I say Masons as well, this is this actually goes back pre-modern Freemasonry to earlier esoteric groups, Rosicrucians, for instance, even back much, much further. But the columns there themselves are Doric columns, and I know it was a bit quick, but we will come back to that because, again, recurring theme, the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian schools of architecture, the three Greek themes. Now, the geometry in the park itself lends itself to the Vesica, and so, again, standard themes. reappearing again. And so this is the other side of the Greek theatre. Again, we have the same colonnade and we have those twin pillars emerging again. And in the background, you might notice that pyramid. Well, that's connected to the Denver City Library building. I wish I had a little bit more information on it. It's a bit of a controversial building. From what I do have, it would suggest, because also in Denver we have a museum by Daniel Libeskind. So these architects are continuing the theme, even though they've moved to this ugly, brutalist, sort of postmodernist, shitty architecture. I don't know what the point anyway, but it still the measures is the important theme, and that these certain themes are repeated is very indicative of the larger pattern. But the Greek theatre itself, so these colonnades which are on either side, they're relevant because, well, what type of columns they are? Well, as they are Ionic columns, and we'll have a bit closer up. So we have the Capitol building, rich in Corinthian. We have those twin columns, twin pillars on either side of this Greek theatre, being Doric, and we have the Ionic. So here we see Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, and this is just one tracing board. You could find very important feature, even the way that the lodges are organized. So different offices, the wardens and deacons will be connected to one of these three columns. But they also represent systems of measure in length, but also in music, and also in weight. And this goes back quite some time, even though the official version of history sort of just completely misses the point. But now we zoom out and we go south of Denver and we come to the US Air Force Academy here in Colorado. I think it's near Buffalo Spring. One of the close towns is called Monument. But the point here is, again, we're going to look at two very modern buildings and an example of how this very strong tradition of masonry has continued through and is embedded in this architecture. And to begin with, we'll look at the Center for Character and Leadership Development. I believe it's its full name. Now, from the side, okay, we'll get to some better views. Okay, so there's one angle now. This is a still shot. So there you can see it looks like the tail fin of a jet plane. That's the Center for Leadership and for Character and Leadership Development. And the building to the left is the chapel for the United States Air Force Academy. So there we see the Center for Character and Leadership Development, and to the right we see the chapel there. An interesting point also is the shield for the US Air Force Academy, the eagle, the cloud, that's okay, but you might notice those twin pillars again. They're pyramidal, but again I think that's just my interpretation of them. But again, another connection, because where it's the Navy, Army, Air Force, Freemasons have had a very strong connection going back, well, to the Civil War and even earlier than that. Okay, so now let's have a look at the buildings in the US Air Force Academy and see where they lead us. The Center for Character and Leadership Development at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado. An interesting building, has many of the it's hard to because of the nature of geometry and triangles and strength. So there's a feature there, but the building itself appears to be shaped as the tail fin of a fighter jet. However, if you look at it from the front, it appears to be an unfinished pyramid. Now, you might think I'm seeing things which aren't there, but all you need to do is to transpose the famous seal from the American dollar bill on top, and well, it matches up very, very well. So we have again the unfinished pyramid, this very Masonic symbol. And just to have a look closer, so I've because we see the pyramid at a slight angle on the dollar bill, and so if we use the true angle and take it away, there again we see how these symbols match up. Now, Center for Character and Leadership Development. A famous motto for the Masons is making good men better. That's one of the reasons for all fraternal organizations, all of them, not just the Masons. But the angle of the pyramid itself also will exactly or very, very closely reflects the tilt of the Earth from where the reason we have the seasons. But it also corresponds very closely to the famous Egyptian image of raising the dead, which again is at the tilt of the Earth, and seems to be implying, as with all these things, a level of as above so below. As what's in the heavens is what's in the earth, and with this type of architecture, with this type of symbolism, you're trying to reflect a greater harmony. And so okay, for instance, this building itself is 105 feet high. Now, when I saw the building, I knew. When I saw the height, I confirmed it. Now, for instance, recent episode went into Michigan. I didn't mention the Beaumont Tower, but that is 105 feet high. Now, there are plenty of other examples of this. Now, for instance, the Pyramid Hill Sculpture Park in Ohio, mentioned that earlier, 105 feet high. 105 feet, total edge length. This is one of the standards for Tony Rosenthal's black cubes. Also, I did a video on the International Peace Gardens. The historic lodge there is 105 feet long. Here in Australia, more than enough examples of it. But 105 feet converts to 3,780 grains. Now, as with all these things, there are going to be some very lovely harmonics with that. Now, to begin with, the synodic period of Saturn is 378 days. So basically, the Earth, Sun, and Saturn will align every 378 days, and the radius of the Moon, 378,000 Royal Egyptian miles. But 105 feet also converts to 1,680, 168. 168 hours per week. This will be a continuing theme throughout the United States Air Force Academy, as well as many other buildings. Now, you're also going to find much more, for instance, again, always the pentagon, but also at 420 palms. So this is a very hermetic number in the sense that Hermes Trismegistus wrote 42 books, Kabbalist tradition, ancient Egyptian tradition. It's quite a lovely number in 3D in regards to the magic cube. But for instance, in the Bible, 42 generations, 42 months the beast will hold dominion. In ancient Egyptian, Vermat, 42 gods, etc., etc. Someone also commented on the Gutenberg Bibles being in 42 lines as well. So there are quite a few connections, repeated connections in itself, but it also converts to 295.3125. We will see this occurring again and again, but to begin with, we need to look at the synodic month, which is where we get our full moons from. One orbit of the moon around the earth in relation to the sun. So this is where we get the 30-day calendar month. The lunar calendar is based on this, but there's a nice, again, this is going to lead us to some beautiful harmonies written into nature, not by man, not by weights and measures of man, but in nature itself. And one of the reasons why as above, so below is so important, and why these measurement systems correlate to this causation, I would say. But for instance, the moon orbits the earth in relation to the sun once every 29.53 days, give or take a fraction. The same applies that if you multiply the diameter of the Earth by 29.53, you get the distance of the Earth to the Moon. Very close. Well, you might notice 378,000 kilometers will bring us to basically the just a anyway. So, but this is built into nature. Because of the elliptical nature of things, there's always a slight give and take, but the synodic month also brings us one of nature's beautiful miracles, and that is the total solar eclipse. So sun, earth and moon in relation to size, if you put them all together, But what the key point is that the sun is 400 times larger than the moon. The actual number is 399.9 something something something. But again, that's a series of averages. To use the number exactly 400 works wonderfully in this equation. So, but the sun is 400 times further away than the moon. So the moon is 400 times smaller, but the moon is 400 times closer. So now let's put the moon into its proper orbit, 29.53 times the size of the Earth. And what do we get? We get the solar eclipse, one of nature's miracles. Now the solar eclipse is very special because it, at least as far as we know, only on the Earth does this occur. There might be other places. It's a big universe out there, but as far as we know at the moment, and because of the way things work, we humans just happen to be here at just the right time for just such a thing to happen. Now, it's more than just the beauty of it. We're all but also able to see the corona of the sun because of this effect, and that gave us an insight into the nature of the well, how the sun works as well. So this is another lovely harmony, a lovely miracle that's been dropped in as well. But on the ionic scale in feet, 105 feet is 109.375. Now this is another very important number in regards to the Earth, the Moon and the stars, and we'll examine that in future episodes anyway. Okay, now, so if we put the Sun, the Earth and the Moon together like that, but there's, again, I've touched on it in early videos, we'll look a little bit further, but effectively 109.375. Again, you see here, so I've got 109.2. Again, because of the elliptical nature of things, this will work out. So it's always plus or minus a little bit of a fraction in regards to these things, because how big exactly is the sun, and a whole bunch of other questions. But 109.375 will effectively give you the relationship of sun, earth and moon in regards to size. However, there's more to this. So for instance, if we convert to the Cremona scale, we'll get a very familiar set of numbers appearing once more. And again, this is the point. It's about harmony, about multiple sets of knowledge coming in together through weights and measures, through very tangible things. And for instance, well, the vesica will be a recurring theme: sun, earth, moon, stars, the clock and the compass, geometry, arithmetic, music, of course, astronomy. So at 60 qubits we get, for instance, 60 minutes per hour, 60 seconds per day, 60 degrees the acute point on the vesica, the dimensions of the Earth, the beauty of the number 6 across multiple dimensions being essentially a perfect number, even going back to Pythagorean schools of thought. At 90 feet, and this is one of the key points in regards to most of these numbers. Now, for instance, if you get the digits, you add them together, you're always going to get, almost always, but there are, because there's these crossover points, but 9's very important in regard, like 9 guides of the Ennead, 9 muses, Odin, 9 days on Yggdrasil, so many other points, but 9 being this perfect number in regards to Hashad numbers. 120 span, well, again, 12 apostles, 12 people in the jury, 12 people on the board, 12 constellations in the zodiac, 12 months per year, beautiful number across 3 dimensions. It's in the vesica, 12 inches per foot. And one of the standards, the constants, is New Jerusalem and the Ark of Utnapishtim from the Epic of Gilgamesh. But you might even notice that the yugas, sorry, now I've blocked out a bit, but anyway, there are 1200 divine years in a yuga. So again, these ancient legends, ancient symbols, ancient measures of time, geometry will persistently come back to this point. So at 270 hand Cremona, on the Cremona scale, again, this number 27, again, from east to west, in even biology, in arithmetic, interestingly, even in binary, Some very important numbers amongst these palindromes in binary. Now, 3600 palm, 3,600 seconds per hour, 360 degree compass, Mayan calendar 360 days, 3,600 divine years in the Treta Yuga. The measures of the moon once more, again, even the way that the 360 degrees, just like the clock, will break down into minutes and seconds, therefore 3600 once more. And so apart from astronomy, we'll also see it in arithmetic, but geometrically speaking, again, so more than just a few. And again, the pentagon, the vesica, the 360 degree compass, which also connects to any four-sided poly, and we'll have a look at more, touch on that when we get to 108, icosahedron, also the golden ratio in cosine. Now, 36 is the 8th triangular number. It's 100 in base 6, but we could but the important key point is that just like 6, well, it's this across dimension. So in the second dimension and the third dimension, it has this lovely set of harmony, unity points where all these things come together. Now, 1080 Cremona inches. Here we have one of the master numbers in regards to the very special numbers, and 108. So the diameter of the moon in regards to the long scale, the visible circumference of the Earth, so the half circumference of the Earth, 10,800. Multiply the diameter of the moon times 108, you get essentially the average. The speed of the Earth around the Sun, 108,000 kilometers at its faster point, which is the polar diameter of Saturn. And if we multiply the diameter of a Sun times 108, we get the distance from Sun to Saturn, just as if we multiply the diameter of a Sun times 1080, that's the Sun to Saturn. If we multiply the diameter of a Sun times 108, we get the distance from the Sun to the Earth. In geometry as well, so on the right hand side there we have a 30 degree, now a 1 meter pendulum at 30 degrees gives us the second, that's the origin of the second across all sorts of geometry. 108 or 1080, again, it just comes over. Now the allegedly modern imperial, from the yardstick to how we measure beer and wine, cubic feet for one stack of timber. You'll just find this reoccurring, and especially through weights and measures. But however, this might have come by accident in relatively modern times, but it goes back to some before the medieval period, way back to the Byzantine, even back to the Greco-Roman era, where 108 in all sorts of weights and measures, all sorts of things. However, in the allegedly, supposedly modern imperial, metric system, they've kept it going, kept it running again. Now, Australia is of such a hermetic country, it's astounding, because even our FM and AM have been set to this scale. Now that might be by accident. However, 1080 full HD screen resolution. Now 108 was very important in regards to the golden number, so both in sine and cosine, again the angles within the pentagram and the pentagon. And of course, they lead us to the golden ratio, the golden number, which is one of along with Pythagorean theorem, the golden number is a core element of this entire field, going back many centuries, actually going back to the recorded beginnings of this. The Tetra Yuga 1290s. 1,296,000 years. That's exactly how many seconds there are in a 360 degree compass, but that breaks down, so you have the entry, the middle and the exit period of this yuga, 108 once more. mentioned earlier the importance of the Ark of Utnapishtim or New Jerusalem. So, from the Epic of Gilgamesh, eloquently describes the amount of material, the pitch, the bitumen that went into it, 108. Now, even the dimensions of it at 120 cubits wide, high, and long lends us to this, which of course will transfer over to 12,000 furlongs of New Jerusalem. Coincidentally, 12,000 furlongs just happens to equate to 108,000 Royal Babylonian grains. Multiple sets of measure, multiple sets of information converging at key points. In case in case you missed it, the Hindus, amongst others, will see. But for instance, 108 chakras in yoga, 108 sun salutations on the spring equinox, 108 beads on the Japamala, Vishnu, 108. These are just a small sample of it across the Hindu, Jains, Sikhs as well. Now, in the Far East, in China, from Shaolin to the first emperor, one must walk 10,800 li to achieve wisdom. It just turns out that 1 li basically equates to the Egyptian royal miles diameter of a moon, but you'll see it in all sorts of other examples, and it's one of the staples, one of the core points in Buddhism. For instance, 108 symbols on each of the Buddha's foot when he died. Ring the bell 108 times. Temples will have this incorporated through them in all sorts of, like for instance, 108 offering bowls in Wat Pho in Bangkok. 108 questions, 108 statements made by the Buddha, reinforced once more. Now at 1440 fingers, well, 1440p screen resolution. Ancient Roman measures, 144 grains, the sun and the moon, 1440 minutes per day, therefore a measure of the earth. And again, for instance, in Australia, the AM dial is set so at 9 hertz separation, so we'll have all of these beautiful numbers because 144, 1 plus 4 plus 4 equals 9. That's one of the reasons for the 9 hertz separation. I mentioned earlier the importance of 9 in regards to this. Now the nonagon overloaded, the hexagon, the outside angles of a hexagon, so 240 times 6, that's how many minutes per day. Done a video in regards to how the geometry of the clock and the vesica and therefore the hexagon combine. Now even at 240 degrees, that's 14,400 minutes. Now it just keeps blending back in. The octahedron, 1440 degrees, represents air, but also if you add all the platonic solids together, you get 1440 degrees. So as you might have, again, these things connect, merge together. If you memorize one number, you memorize so much. You memorize a few numbers, the world is yours. 144 is the 12th Fibonacci. 12 squared is 144. Now 3, 4, 5, so 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 5 to the third, 144. If you add 6 to the fourth to the end of that, you get 1440. Now, even in regards to Euler's conjecture, 144. Sorry. Now, the yugas once more. So the Satya Yuga breaks down into 144 beginning, middle, and end. Also, the Mayan calendar, the Baktun, 144,000 days. Ancient legends, ancient cycles of time, geometry, astronomy, music, arithmetic, merging all together. Now, Rosicrucians hold that there are 144 octaves and 144 elements. So we see in, well, essentially what's chemistry. Now, alchemy's got a bad name attached to it, but alchemy is, the difference between alchemy and chemistry is an arbitrary point in time when the Royal Society basically changed things over. But as I mentioned, again, you'll find that here, for instance, the Ark of Utnapishtim, the original flood story, not the the oldest surviving written form of a flood story, again describes the Ark, and 1440 in the first and second dimension describes this. But of course, this will transfer over to New Jerusalem. Now that might be just because of the 12 by 12 by 12. However, even the walls of New Jerusalem are described as being 144 cubits, and 144 in the Bible. More than a few examples of that. For instance, 12 tribes times 12,000, so 144 thousand. So it's quite a lovely system, and this is only one building from the US Air Force Academy in Colorado, and all of this will join to all the others that I've done in this series and previous series. It just repeats itself all over. Now, again, 324 pentagram reference, as well as a description of the moon. Sorry. So yeah, so we've seen, we've gone through now. That little black square that might have obscured just because I incorrectly labeled it as Denver, Colorado. No, it's in another county south of Denver. And so this is one of the buildings in the US Air Force Academy in Colorado. And there's another very important one, the chapel, and this blends with this one, and it will blend with so many others. So basically right next to the Center for Character and Leadership Development in the US Air Force Academy in Denver, we have here this triangular chapel building. Again, now there will be, it's of the brutalist style of architecture, so it's not very rich in overt symbolism. However, the pattern will continue, and not just the external measures, so it's not just the length or the width and some other details in there, but it's even the individual buildings within there. So what we'll have a Protestant, a Catholic, a Jewish, Buddhist chapel, interfaith chapel, and also another interesting feature is the falcon stone on the outside. But so just as an idea, so we have a Center for Character and Leadership Development, and there we see the chapel in the distance, and once more again, same thing. US Air Force Academy, even the twin pillars on the shield, emblem for the academy there. And side note, but interesting, because when I first got into this was like one of the pictures I just randomly found, and anyway, it's just weird how things come back on themselves. But anyway, this building itself, very rich. Again, it's built by the Hermetic Code, and it's an excellent example because just like the Center for Character and Leadership Development, it's of the new school of architecture, so it can't be called a carry-on from previous eras. Now, here's an example. So we have the Protestant, Jewish, Catholic, Buddhist chapel, as well as the Falcon Circle, which is meant to be for I know what you call pagans, yeah, Wiccans, pagans, and Druids as well. I'm coming up to over 35 minutes, so I'm going to end this episode now, and I'll carry on directly with the US Air Force Academy Chapel here, and we'll look at the measures, but that'll be for the next episode. But it will blend seamlessly with what we've already seen, and it will connect again to so many of the state capitals, cathedrals, important public buildings across the US. Just further evidence of the Hermetic Code then and now. And with that, have a good one.